What is some of the scariest monsters that you can imagine scaring the life out of you? Do you think about the boogeyman? Do you think about vampires, werewolves, demons, other monstrosities, eldritch horrors, Cthulhu, stuff that would make you seem like your life is utterly hopeless? Well, there's one that I can think of, and especially after reading this book, that type of monster is really one of the most terrifying. And a lot of people oftentimes ignore it. You will hear this corny phrase plenty of times. But after you finish reading this book, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. And that's that one of the most terrifying monsters ever is humans. The savagery, the evil acts that humans can do is some of the most terrifying things ever. You would be surprised how much horrible things people can do. But the thing that's scarier than an evil person is a person who's doing horrible things but thinks they're in the right. That has a childlike innocence that makes them believe this is what I should be doing. Everybody else is wrong. I'm right. Because there's no reasoning with them. They'll be a complete psychopath and you won't know how to feel. You won't know if you should be sympathizing. You won't know if you should be fighting back with your life. You'll be questioning yourself. And there's going to be situations you might get unfortunately put in where it'll feel just as hopeless as if any extraordinary, super ordinary monster were to stand in front of you and attack you. Sometimes humans can put you in situations like that. And that's why I want to talk about this book. So, I've read Stephen King's short stories. I've read his entire Night Shift collection, of course. I've also read Skeleton Crew, and I did like half of the stories in Skeleton Crew. There are some stories in there that I think are very good, some of them that I don't think are that good, but Night Shift has stories that I pretty much all love, and some of my favorite short stories of all time are from there. And I was a little bit nervous to get into Stephen King novels because I've heard and I've experienced it even in the second half, or the bad half of Skeleton Crew and the beginning of Nightmares and Dreamscape, because this man can have a lot of word dump. Stephen King is notorious for having a lot of useless word dump that goes nowhere, way too much detail that nobody cares about. And that makes you kind of turned away from reading the book because you feel like he's wasting your time. You feel like he's just rambling and rambling and rambling, and you want to get to the good stuff. You want it to come quicker, but it's just instead getting dragged out for the page count. Well, this is the first novel that I've read by Stephen King, and this is the most intense horror thriller book that I've ever read in my life. This book had amazing pacing. There was no word dump in it. This was a great pick for my first novel to read by Stephen King, full-length novel. This book is super intense, super creepy, super scary. It made me physically cringe, physically squeam. It made me nearly gag and vomit at one point. It made me freak out at plenty of points, and it built a level of paranoia and intensity within me as I was reading. And so that means Stephen King, he did the job right. He did it perfectly. He made a book that completely and utterly floored me and terrified me in terms of thrillers. And this is easily so far my favorite horror/thriller book that I've read. I'm reading a thriller book right now by Dean Koontz that maybe by the end of it could probably become my new favorite. I don't know. We're so far 30% of the way through it. It's very good. But Stephen King's book right now, this is going to be in the Hall of Fame. One of the best horror/thriller books that I've read. And that is none other than Misery. Misery is one of his most famous works, one of his best-selling works. I believe this was the first book to win a Bram Stoker Award back in, I think, 1987. And this is 100% worth it, all right? I've read some nominees for Bram Stoker Awards, like Summer of Night by Dan Simmons, which is very good. Nosferatu by Joe Hill, which is one of my favorite books. And, of course, that's Stephen King's son that wrote that one. And this being the very first winner of the Bram Stoker Award, yeah, 100% worth it. This book is fantastic. It's amazing. Again, it's a very intense read. It'll leave you on the edge of your seat. It's going to freak you out. It's going to make you physically cringe. It's going to make you physically gag. It's going to put you through a whole bunch of different emotions involving the main character and the villain. And it's really an effective book. So what is the plot about for those of you who have not seen it? Also, apologies for this bright light, but if I turn the camera this way, there is this angelically super bright light. I think it actually went away, but it's still a little bit there. There's a super bright light despite me having, obviously, blinds up there. So I don't want to, have heaven's door shining upon you while I'm talking about this dark, disturbing book. So what is the plot about? The plot, for those of you who have not read Misery, maybe you've not seen the movie. I have not seen the movie, but I heard it's faithful enough. The plot is basically about this author named Paul Sheldon. Paul Sheldon ends up in a very bad car accident. His legs are completely pulverized. All the bones are broken, shattered. He's got pieces of jagged bone poking up against his skin in all different disfigured angles, completely shredded legs, and he's in the worst pain imaginable. He feels like he's nearly going to die. However, as he's drifting in and out of consciousness, he's going back to flashbacks of his past at the beach with his family. He relates the pain to this pillar that was in this beach getting eaten up by the waves that come from the ocean. And every time the shoreline or whatever receded and the pillar was exposed, that's what he relates to as pain. Extremely horrible, agonizing pain. And he generally feels like he's going to die. However, he ends up gaining back consciousness. But he's not in the custody of the police. He's not in the custody of a nurse or a doctor or getting checked up. In fact, he's not in the custody of God either. He did not end up dying. Quite possibly, he may be in the hands of the human form of the devil. He wakes up and he sees that his, legs are casted up, or I don't know if they're casted up. I think they're wrapped up in blankets tightly. He's in this bed. He's in this kind of empty room. He seems to be drugged up on some pills, and he sees this woman sitting next to him. And this woman, middle-aged woman, got neck-length brown hair, a little bit on the chubby side, and she's staring at him very intently. And as he starts gaining back consciousness and figuring out what's going on, asking questions, trying to see what happened to him, he realizes that after he got into this bad car accident, this woman named Annie Wilkes happened to drive by his car, see the wreckage, and she put him in her car, her truck, and drove him back to her house. And she wrapped him up. She put him on some painkillers because she was a nurse back in the day. No longer working, but she used to be a nurse, so she has some medical experience. And it just so happens that because Paul Sheldon is a famous author, he writes these kind of really corny, badly written romance novels called Misery. It's a series that's one of his best-selling series, and he has a lot of writing quirks and stuff that you can easily kind of relate to a tongue-in-cheek relationship to King. You can see a lot of Stephen King within Paul Sheldon, I would assume. He could probably relate to his character a lot. And just so happens that Annie Wilkes, the woman who happened to pass by his car by sheer coincidence and found him, she's actually his biggest fan. She is a humongous fan of the Misery romance novel series. She loves it. She's absolutely, stoked about him being here. She's taking care of him, nursing him, and trying to recuperate him while simultaneously, very much admiring him the entire time. However, she's currently reading his latest Misery book, and as Paul Sheldon is kind of freaked out, he thinks that she's very weird. She kind of has some psychopathic tendencies. Like, she will have this moment where she'll blank out of her face and kind of look all dead and look like there's this dark crevice behind her eyes. She seems a little bit socially awkward. She seems a little bit psychopathic. The fact that she didn't take him to a hospital, she took him to his house, and he can't move because his legs are pulverized, so he's completely crippled and stuck in this woman's house. This is a very unfortunate situation for him, and he's hooked up on these codeine, painkiller, Novril type of drugs, very much getting addicted to it because the pain is extraordinary inside of his legs, and he needs something to, reduce it. And then what ends up happening is, let's just say, as the story's continuing, and she's nursing him back to health, she's finished reading the current Misery book, her favorite book series, with the character, I believe, is named Misery Chastain, who's her idol. She loves this character in the book, relates to her very much. She sees at the end of the book that Misery dies, and this angers her. This enrages her. She's mad. She's furious. She starts acting up and going crazy. She starts throwing cutlery and soup bowls and smashing them against the wall. She starts getting angry, and it looks as if she's about to hurt Paul Sheldon. The man is already completely vulnerable, and it looks like she's about to go on a complete rampage and hurt him. And obviously she supplies him these painkiller pills, and she holds back from giving it to him, and he is struggling and sweating and basically feels like he's on the verge of dying, and through all 9 levels of hell, dealing with this pain and her holding back these painkillers. And because she's very upset, she basically gives Paul Sheldon an ultimatum. Because I'm your biggest fan, because I saved your life, because I'm keeping you here, because I'm taking care of you, you can start seeing the psychopathic behavior in Annie Wilkes. She says, yeah, I'm going to nurse you back to health. But she buys him a typewriter and says, you know what, you're going to write a new misery book. Forget this manuscript you're writing about this new book involving a guy who loves cars or street racing. Forget that. You're going to be writing a new misery sequel book, and you're going to bring back Misery Chastain in the way that I want you to bring her back. And if you don't do it, let's just say some bad things are going to happen to you. And he's put in this agonizingly horrible, horrific, terrifying, intense situation where this crazy stalker, psychopath fan, this biggest fan of his, has complete control over him. He's in a situation where he's fully crippled. He has no phone. He has no way to contact the people that he loves. He has no way that the police can find him. And he's stuck in this house with this crazy, loony, mad lady called Annie Wilkes. Annie Wilkes is one of the most terrifying villains. There is plenty of intense, horribly described scenes, not horribly as in written, horribly as in feeling scenes in this book, where she starts cutting off his medication and he's suffering and agonizingly screaming, and you hear this man on the verge of dying. I've dealt with bad pains in my life at certain points. They're horrible. I can only imagine what this guy is going through, and that too, you add in the fact that he's addicted to this pain-killing drug that she's giving him called Novril, and because of that, his pain is even more worse because of the addiction withdrawal. And she starts, let's just say, getting into some more aggressive methods. She may start hurting him. She may start damaging him. You may see her, breaking his legs at a certain point. You may see her start severing off limbs and then cauterizing them with blow torches. She makes him... There's a scene in the book that nearly made me vomit, and it made me nauseous thinking about it, where in a fit of anger, she ended up breaking the soup bowl. She ends up cleaning it, and she sadistically cleans this soup bowl stain on her wall very slowly, and she's not giving him Paul Sheldon his pills, and he's very much agonizingly dying in pain. And then she gives him his pills. But she takes that giant yellow bucket of that soapy rag water with the dirty rag in it that she used to clean the wall, and she puts it up against his lips and starts waterboarding him and makes him forced to drink that disgusting, dirty, soapy, chemical-filled water to swallow the pills. And he basically has to force it down and make sure he doesn't vomit. Otherwise, the painkillers that he got are going to leave his body, and she says she's not going to come back with any more, so he better hold that down. Horrifying, man. Some of the violence that she does later on in the book is terrifying. She goes into some crazy stuff where she goes into some lunatic stages where she starts losing her mind and he's suffering because she's not taking care of him, or she'll start doing some crazy, disgusting, horrible stuff that is so amazingly described in the book. Paul Sheldon's journey in dealing with this lady is fantastically written. It is so heartbreaking to see this man suffer. It's very interesting. He's an interesting character. Of course, he's an author. I'm an avid reader. People who are reading the book are avid readers. They're probably avid Stephen King readers. So seeing him do some tongue-in-cheek references and humor with Paul Sheldon, kind of self-inserting a little bit of himself into the character, that makes it very, I wouldn't say relatable, but you connect with Paul Sheldon. You understand where he's coming from. You can get his mindset. You like the quirks that he has involving writing. And he's put in a very desperate situation. And this book is agonizingly long. Again, not in a bad way, in a good way. You suffer with this man. You see what he goes through. You see his breaking point. And by the ending of the book, you can tell this man is left with some permanent damage. Not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. Although I won't say what happens by the end, but it is crazy. It is horrifying. It's wild. This is the gold standard, platinum standard example of the way to write a thriller. This is easily the most intense and disturbing thriller book I've ever read. It's so fucking good. I love it. Annie Wilkes is one of the most terrifying villains, all right? Shout out to Harvey's Horror House, formerly known as Goosebumps, Ohio fan, I believe. Sorry if I got that wrong. But he told me that Annie Wilkes is scarier than any monster Stephen King has wrote. You know, paranormal, supernatural, that stuff. And I was like, I can kind of see why. But then when I finished the book, I'm like, I agree with you, bro. Annie Wilkes is horrific. She is terrifying because you see the humanity in her, but it's a very twisted sense of humanity. She's very psychopathic. You find out about the stuff that she's done in the past, potentially, maybe not in her nursing career. Horrifying to find out. She becomes more and more crazy, more and more loony as the story goes on, and it's all at Paul Sheldon's expense. Guys, I can't recommend you read this thriller enough. I would give this book a 9.5 out of 10. This is going in my S tier. This is going in the Hall of Fame horror/thriller books that I've read, because I solely read adult horror, kids horror, young adult horror, all that stuff, thrillers. You know, this is amazing. I love this book. This book is so well done. It's so great. I can 100% see why so many people like this book, and I 100% back up and agree. It getting the first Bram Stoker Award in 1987, completely worth it. It deserved it. Stephen King, home run. He does not have the flaws of his other writings where there's word dump. There's no word dump in this book. It's all well-paced, all well-constructed. And yeah, man, great job, Stephen King. You wrote a timeless classic for sure. Misery is the best horror/thriller book, horror thriller, that I've read so far. 9.5 out of 10. Fantastic. That's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more content to come. Yesterday, I just uploaded a Jaws by Peter Benchley review. Go check that out if you haven't already. I have other adult horror books that I reviewed on this channel. Young adult horror, kids horror, a bunch of different stuff. I have TV shows, movies. I'm the Horror Tavern, the one-shop stop. And my chair just broke. That's how you know this book is so good. The one-stop shop of horror. Amazing, fantastic. And yeah, that's all I have for today. The broken chair says that I have to get out of here. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Deuces. Annie Wilkes, man, you're terrifying. You even affect reality. Maybe I should stop talking shit about her. Did you hear a knock outside my door?